What's up, everybody? We finally made it, right? This is the moment. We've been talking about this for so long, like it's been over a month. You know, people were just so excited after part 1. They're like, "When is part 2?" But no, I wrote the script for all 4 parts in April, and I'm so sorry. I'm really nervous right now. I've been going through and working on each video in order, based on the script that I wrote, and I've edited some stuff, and Loader's helped add and tack on some things and change some wordings of things. So it's a long process. That's why it takes so long to get these out. I just want to say right now, you know how like television series have like a mid-season finale, and then there's like you gotta wait a while to get the next like set of episodes. Well, this is gonna be like the mid-season finale, because after this we're gonna be watching and doing rehydrated stuff. So after the summer, I'm going to get back to work on parts 3 and 4. Hopefully by then my video editing skills are even more ironed out, so I can bring you something even better. We're going to be even more ambitious than we were in this one. You'll see here. We put a lot of effort into this, and I'm really excited to show you this 90-minute basically feature film of how speedrunning revived Battle for Bikini Bottom. This is where it all began after Colin Hazel retired from, creating the foundations that made this game so great. People rediscovered it and made it what it is today. And this is the video that establishes how we set foundations of the community that still exists today. So that's a little brief about what this video is, and I'm just going to stop jittering and being nervous, and hopefully you guys enjoy. I'm just going to show you guys now. We're going to start without further ado. Here we go. This is how speedrunning revived Battle for Bikini Bottom, Part 2.
From 2012 through 2015, we followed a small group of friends as they built a community surrounding one of their favorite games. But after several years of revolutionizing their passion project, Battle for Bikini Bottom was, once again, left behind. But little did they know, it wouldn't be for long. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm SM Loader, and this is part 2 of how speedrunning revived Battle for Bikini Bottom.
Hey everyone, so I am really, as you could probably imagine, I'm super nervous right now. I just did a whole intro and recorded that whole thing and started the video, and I forgot to hit start streaming. I have the recording of everything I just said for proof that I straight up started at like 7:58 and I forgot to hit start streaming. So I had the whole local recording if you're curious. Since we've already pretty much wasted 2 minutes, I'm just gonna say right now, this video, a lot of effort went into this video. Pretty much all I said was it's gonna take a while for parts 3 and 4 to come out, because this is pretty much a mid-season finale where you gotta wait for the rest of the episodes after the half the season's over. We're going to do a lot of rehydrated stuff over the summer. We're going to do all that, and then we're going to come back to working on parts 3 and 4 after the summer's over, once my video editing skills are ironed out and everything. Even more than we've already gotten through in these. I can't even talk. I can't believe I forgot to hit start streaming. Okay. All right. Let's just get right to it, because I don't want to make you guys wait any longer. Okay. Yeah, we were going to do an epic countdown, but yeah, I kind of screwed up. It's all right though. Hopefully you guys enjoy. Put it on right now.
From 2012 through 2015, we followed a small group of friends as they built a community surrounding one of their favorite games. But after several years of revolutionizing their passion project, Battle for Bikini Bottom was, once again, left behind. But little did they know, it wouldn't be for long. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm SM Loader, and this is part 2 of how speedrunning revived Battle for Bikini Bottom. With the growth of speedrunning from 2012 through 2016 came a new sense of competitiveness in the hobby. The advent of open broadcaster software and a high abundance of products used for retro game capture made recording and streaming runs more accessible than ever before. Many personalities in the speedrunning community built themselves up on Twitch during this period, as the rising popularity of streaming only complemented the rising motivation for grinding runs. The fast and flashy movement showcased in many of these games grabbed the attention of thousands. Platformers especially became the leading titles in the charge to make speedrunning sensational. But today, we'll be focusing on a 3D platformer that was off the radar. Battle for Bikini Bottom had gone through a complete transformation from 2010 through 2015, abandoning its grindy, tedious collectathon elements in favor of creative routing and a variety of advanced and technical strategies. Cruise boosting especially transformed BfBB into a true platforming game that centralized its new and unique movement system. Thanks to Cole, Hazel, and their small group of friends, the potential of the game had been unlocked. So with all these bells and whistles, it was only a matter of time before someone rediscovered Battle for Bikini Bottom in its revamped form, right? Well, there was no telling how long it would take, since the community had died down harshly since the summer of 2014. Unfortunately, there were many demotivators holding the game back from reaching its potential. The few tutorials in existence were extremely shallow, runners weren't motivated to pick up the game's obscure yet optimal Xbox version, and the community hadn't received any significant exposure in a very long time. This was in stark contrast to most of the popular speedruns of this era. They offered an abundance of learning resources, were optimized on more popular speedrunning consoles, and were supported by streamers popular enough to be partnered on Twitch. The more established communities attracted entry-level speedrunners by the dozen, and due to the amount of effort being put into them, they evolved and optimized crazy fast. Though BfBB had its few visionaries and creatives, it had never been developed on a scale nearly that large. So, even after its complete transformation, Battle for Bikini Bottom surely had at least one more hidden layer of potential, just practically begging to be explored. But it would take the fresh ambition of new, competitive runners to decipher the mechanics of Cole's arcane tricks and use them in full runs of their own. And still, if the game were to survive and thrive, they would also have to address the community's flaws holding back its potential. Battle for Bikini Bottom would eventually need someone with motivation to not only make the game faster, but also to solve these issues outside of the game as well. But as a community so small and so unmotivated, it seemed like it would never regain life like it once saw ever again. That is, until December 5th, 2015, when an any% speedrun in 1:19:25 offered a glimmer of hope. The speedrun was uploaded by user Fuff118. Why is this significant? Well, it was his first upload ever and an immediate second place spot. It wasn't known until later that Fuff had spent the previous month learning and practicing the speedrun on his own through referencing past runs of the game. Fuff had been one of the few players up until now who took the initiative to dissect Cole's runs and figure out exactly what the man had done to go so fast. For such a small community, his motivation to grind was impressive. Not to mention the fact that he was actually able to finish learning the game, a feat far too intimidating for many to tackle. Fuff's sudden appearance caught the interest of many dormant runners in the community. His appearance from the shadows and his lightning-fast learning showed the retirees that their passion project still had life left to live. Back in the old days, Cole and Hazel rarely attempted runs outside of races. Cole cites that there wasn't much motivation to grind due to the community's small size and low interactivity. But Fuff was a solo grinder, and by the end of January in 2016, he'd improved his time to 1:16:06 on GameCube. And at the beginning of February, he had already acquired an Xbox 360 to keep pushing for sub 110. He was on track to become the next world record holder. Fuff's speedrun grind garnered a steady following while he streamed the game on Twitch, the premier livestream platform for gaming and speedrunning. With new activity in the game's directory on Twitch, viewers who had previously lost interest in BfBB began checking out Fuff's stream. With a humble average of 10 viewers, he'd stream silent attempts with intent to improve the 80% world record. Though a mysterious character at first, Fuff started to communicate with his viewers by typing in chat and expressed interest in helping them learn the strategies that he'd come to figure out on his own. One of his viewers, Jared's Giants, had gained interest in BfBB during the cold days, but never went through with learning due to the run's inaccessibility. Now, with help from Fuff and the small community forming in his stream, Jared was able to finish learning the game. Yet another glimmer of hope for those who thought the community had reached its expiration date. Fuff's effort to single-handedly learn the speedrun and help his viewers understand the game did not go unnoticed. Many started gathering into his streams with the hopes of witnessing something spectacular. And though he only communicated through chat on some occasions, his passion radiated through his gameplay. On March 5th, 2016, he'd finally get his first big break. For the first time in nearly 2 years, Battle for Bikini Bottom 80% had a new world record holder who'd improved on Cole's personal best by 4 seconds. With an active world record holder, fresh and motivated to grind for improvement, the original BfBB community would soon witness their foundations experience a revival. Fuff brought to the table greater interest in optimizing movement and seeing what else BfBB had to offer. He'd soon create the first substantial route for the 100% speedrun and pick up Cole's unfinished 100% within game codes project. With experience collecting every spatula in the game in a variety of scenarios, Fuff's movement would quickly evolve to the best the game had seen up until this point. Fuff would soon achieve the first 108 in Battle for Bikini Bottom 80% on March 15, 2016. Though Fuff's world record still used the route set forward by Cole and the former community, there were still some small optimizations that stood out. Fuff's runs showcased early attempts to manipulate Robo Sandy's clothesline move by luring her to the edge of the stage, which would cause it to initiate earlier than normal. And in the Robo Patrick boss fight, he tried manipulating the spins from a different position than those who came before him. Still, however, this strategy gave inconsistent results. Fuff also made better use of the note cycle in Squidward's Dream to make the segment much more consistent. His understanding of cruise boost movement mechanics was also impressive for how recently he'd started running. The new world record holder was making an effort to polish the game he'd inherited, allowing for more consistent paces and faster improvement. Fuff again improved his world record to a 108.24 on March 28th. By now, his stream community was far more established and supported his efforts to optimize the game. Some members of the older community even returned to watch Fuff's improvement, and they were eager to ignite the chat whenever he entered the final boss on world record pace. It was reminiscent of the good old days. Fuff's stream was slowly uniting Battle for Bikini Bottom fans of past and present, yet still many could not get over the hurdle of learning the speedrun. Fuff had continued some of Cole's previous projects, but not his tutorial series. Unlike Jared, most people were more than reluctant to ask a stranger to teach them a full speedrun. However, there still existed the possibility of another brave soul taking the Fuff approach and learning entirely on their own. A stream titled Ruining Your Childhood began appearing more and more frequently in the Battle for Bikini Bottom directory alongside Fuff's, where he'd recently achieved the first 107 on April 8th. After this run, he decided to take a break from the category to focus on 100% speedruns. During his leave, this other channel became the hotspot for reinterested community members to watch 80% speedruns. And this channel was run by another up-and-comer, SHiFT HD. And SHiFT was already in the low 120 range on the GameCube version when others started to take notice. Another runner motivated by his own will to learn and grind the game during an era void of resources. And much like Fuff, he'd seemingly come out of nowhere with a mysterious background. But within several streams, SHiFT started opening up to viewers and began talking about picking up the Xbox version of the game to further his improvement. And once it arrived, he kicked into high gear. which attracted the attention of other speedrunners interested in BfBB. At this point, SHiFT wasn't really involved in the community surrounding the game though. He was only aware of Hazel's any % task, which piqued his interest in cruise boosting, and Cole's former world record from which he'd learned the rest of the game. He was kind of on his own island, just doing his thing, day after day. It wasn't until SHiFT met Konosumi from a Twitch raid that he'd finally begin getting to know some of the people surrounding Battle for Bikini Bottom. Kona had expressed interest in learning to run Battle for Bikini Bottom in the past and had noticed SHiFT due to the frequency of his streams. The two chatted for a bit, and SHiFT eventually decided to try creating the first full BfBB any % tutorial after he'd achieved sub 110. With a time this competitive, it would assure the explanations in the video were at least decent enough to help his new friend learn the run. Kona would patiently wait for the creation of the guide, as would some other lurking prospective runners. Setting a goal time of 109 caused some community members to wonder, would SHiFT eventually attempt to beat Fuff's world record? But SHiFT didn't know the answer to that question. His primary motivation behind achieving this goal was allowing himself to create the tutorial video for Kona and the rest of the small community beginning to form around his channel. And at this point, SHiFT probably wasn't even aware of what times Fuff was achieving. It seemed he was oblivious to anything outside of his own community, and the same could be said for the other small communities on their own islands as well. That is, until an elder member of the mainlands invited both SHiFT and Fuff to the new Battle for Bikini Bottom Discord server of 2016. This server was the replacement for the former Skype group of 2015 and earlier. Most of the older runners had joined the server, but they were all inactive. With Fuff and SHiFT being the only ones actively running and streaming the game, the rest of the reawakened community was anticipating and hoping that SHiFT would rise to the occasion and create world record competition, something the community had not experienced in over 2 years. And with Fuff returning to any % to defend his time, seeing as SHiFT's improvement was not stopping anytime soon, they all knew it was only a matter of time. While Fuff derusted his any % runs, SHiFT finally achieved his 109 on May 25th, 2016. That same stream, he recorded the full any % tutorial he'd promised Konosumi and the viewers he'd garnered from streaming runs of BfBB. Within the coming months, several new runners would finish learning with SHiFT's tutorial and submit full runs to the leaderboard, a phenomenon SHiFT cites as being more fulfilling and motivating than even improving his own personal bests. The first complete Battle for Bikini Bottom any % tutorial is linked in the description if you would like to check it out. Though BfBB was both Fuff and SHiFT's first attempt to speedrun, their community included other players with prior experience in speedrunning. Jared's Giants was a former top runner in Luigi's Mansion, and he just rejoined the community with help from the new any % tutorial. Konosumi, who'd also developed a small Twitch following through speedrunning a variety of games, would eventually learn through the tutorial as well. The new Battle for Bikini Bottom Discord server helped to kickstart their friendships, especially Jared's and SHiFT's, who'd form a much closer friendship with their passion for the game as the backbone. The community was proving its resilience even long after many thought it was curtains. The second revival was imminent, and a grand occasion was needed to set it all in motion. Fuff would finally improve his own world record from 107.53 to 107.40 on May 28, 2016. Meanwhile, SHiFT's improvement continued even more dramatically leading into June. A few days after his second 109, he landed a low 108 on June 3rd. And, only 2 days later, SHiFT finished Battle for Bikini Bottom in 107.39, which would have been a world record if Fuff had not achieved 107.31 only 2 days earlier. By now, the view count between their streams had doubled in anticipation for the coming competition. But later that same day, the wait was finally over. Yet another new world record holder in the same year. The game's competition had been revived, yet both runners knew there was still lots of room for improvement. Fuff would demonstrate this 4 days later in response to SHiFT's first world record.
All right, Pinhead, your time is up.
With both runners so close to the next minute mark, the race to 106 was on. SHiFT and Fuff's competition would mirror that of Cole's and Hazel's from years ago, even to the extent of representing their respective countries. With USA and Canada chants flooding Twitch chat, the second renaissance was in full force. On June 11th, 2016, viewers checked into Fuff's stream to find him on insane pace, nearly 50 minutes into the run. He was already on the perfect line for a 106, over half a minute ahead of his 107.03. But this run could even skip straight to the 105 if the stars aligned. Fuff was unable to clutch a 105, but did close out the first 106, and this run set the stakes way higher. The main focus of both world record contenders became achieving 105 before the other. SHiFT returned to running the next day and claimed a 106 of his own, missing Fuff's new world record from the day before by 9 seconds. SHiFT and Fuff would continue getting on runs on great paces throughout the next several days, but couldn't close any out. On June 17, 2016, SHiFT finally got a promising run out of the Dutchman's graveyard. Heading into the final fight, viewers anticipated the next world record trade. Despite choking, SHiFT did manage to get a new personal best of 106.48, missing Fuff's world record by just 5 seconds. Fuff would need to improve his time soon if he wanted to defend the title, but just 2 days later, SHiFT got another run into the Chum Bucket Lab. This time, he was on even pace with the run he choked only 2 days earlier. This was his chance.
And here we are, folks, the main event. A gauntlet of the robot better change tactics and fast.
Yo!
Will SpongeBob be able to neutralize the giant robot's brain?
SHiFT reclaimed the world record by a margin of 8 seconds, bringing it back to the USA. With both runners actively grinding, the community wondered who would achieve the first 105. Fuff's best paces were faster by far, but SHiFT's consistency with major tricks allowed him to compete against his full runs. Their differing strengths and weaknesses made the competition all that much more exciting. The two would continue grinding for the remainder of June, with many great paces bleeding out under pressure. Then finally, on June 27, 2016, the first 105 in Battle for Bikini Bottom any percent was achieved. At last, SHiFT achieved a minute break of his own, and split really, really early. But it had been done. The run was retimed to 105.52, and now it was Fuff's turn to answer back. But SHiFT wouldn't go down without a fight. Though world record competition was fun for everyone to rally behind, Fuff and SHiFT were ultimately working together to optimize strategies during the races for the 106 and the 105. They had worked together to optimize the Sea Needle bungees, where Fuff rediscovered a consistent strategy for the first 2 dives, and SHiFT built off of these dives to find the third. SHiFT found and implemented new tech in RoboPatrick called swing stalling, which allowed for safe suspension above the arena while still dropping boxes to jump on as the fight progressed. Fuff finished developing the modern method of RoboSandy manipulations that is still used in runs to this day. Their teamwork helped Battle for Bikini Bottom reach the minute threshold even Cole himself believed would be the end of the line. But Battle for Bikini Bottom's progression was far from over. Meanwhile, amidst the competition for world record, the community realized that 104 would not be realistically achievable with their current knowledge of the game. Having been speedrunning BfBB for the past few months, SHiFT had become knowledgeable enough to start making major changes to Cole's foundational route. With such scarce documentation, open-mindedness would be needed to complement his research. So SHiFT began spending most of his time raking through old playlists and forum posts, familiarizing himself with the game's buried, yet surprisingly deep history. He had to make sure that everything ever found was accounted for. After digging through Cole's old videos to learn about some of the strategies forgotten between the first and second revivals, SHiFT believed that he had come up with a way to save half a minute in the 80% speedrun by repurposing an old trick with new ideas. He had rediscovered Dilemma Skip through watching Cole's full runs uploaded in 2014, which had apparently been dropped and replaced by the Cruise Boost method found later that same year. Though the Cruise Boost method was far easier to perform, it wasn't that much faster than the old school damage boost. By returning this spatula to the beginning of the run, SHiFT could now push one spatula before Industrial Park to the end of the run. If you recall our routing discussion from part 1, 40 spatulas must be obtained to enter Industrial Park to obtain the cruise bubble, which is used for cruise boosting, and 34 must be obtained afterward to finish the game. So now, by sacrificing a bit of time and bringing Patrick's Dilemma back to the beginning of the run, he knew he could push back a spatula that would be much faster with cruise boosting to the end. And SHiFT knew just the one for the job.
Hey, B-Sauce. Josh here. The prawn. In the cases of the Flying Dutchman and RoboSponge, touching an invisible debug trigger above the zone spawn point plays the finishing cutscene and awards a spatula, allowing the player to completely skip the boss fight. Initially, the prawn's debug trigger wasn't even known about. Based on the location of the debug trigger in the RoboSponge boss fight, the community theorized in 2015 that this would mean the prawn's debug trigger would be located directly above the player's spawn point. Unfortunately, that meant that the prawn debug trigger would be located completely out of bounds, assuming it even existed in the first place. Guess the runners were just out of luck then, right? Wrong. Way back during Cole's days of glitch hunting the SpongeBob movie game in 2013, he discovered a clipping method that involved repeatedly activating the sonic wave guitar in a tight space. Noticing the similarities between game engines, a glitch hunter named 4 decided to try this in BfBB a year later with the cruise bubble. After all, the movie game was built on BfBB's existing engine and assets. And as it turned out, it worked. 4 coined the strategy L clipping, as you achieve the trick by mashing the shit out of the L trigger. With the advent of L clipping, the potential prawn trigger was reachable. Hazel and the gang ventured out into the void, and lo and behold, the prawn was skipped. Oh wow. In Battle for Bikini Bottom's second revival, SHiFT started using prawn skip in his any percent runs. When compared to the slow, early game method of defeating prawn, this bad boy saved a hefty chunk of time. This prawn skip reroute, the first of many reroutes in 2016, would save nearly half a minute in the any percent speedrun, outweighing the comparatively negligible time loss from completing Patrick's Dilemma without cruise boosting. So the next time you encounter something that's just out of reach, maybe you just aren't mashing hard enough. And as always, thanks for watching.
SHiFT began grinding runs with
The prawn.
while Fuff would continue using the route he'd used to achieve 106 and nearly a 105. He'd been getting some wild paces lately and didn't see the need to update strats just yet. SHiFT, on the other hand, spent most of his attempts resetting in Jellyfish Fields after updating to the new route. He wasn't really getting anywhere despite running with faster strats. If Fuff wanted to reclaim the world record, now would be the time to strike. Fuff missed the world record by 5 seconds after failing the notorious RoboSponge skip, but still managed to clutch his own 105. After finishing this run, Fuff decided to take an extended break from any percent and would focus on 100% until the end of the summer. World record competition paused indefinitely as SHiFT and Fuff worked on optimizing their own focuses solo. Though the competition for first place had come to a close, the any percent speedrun and the Battle for Bikini Bottom community both continued to thrive. On July 7th, SHiFT finally achieved a personal best with the new prawn skip route, improving his world record by 1 second. Since his first 105, SHiFT had started using his microphone throughout the entire run rather than just in specific moments to communicate. It was a change of pace for what viewers came to expect at this point, and it allowed them to share all of the greatest moments and the not so fortunate ones.
Wait, no, stop it, stop, no! No!
Fucking stop! Where can I even cruise boost? What am I gonna do? Oh my god, are you fucking kidding me?
Some admired SHiFT's display of passion, while others just couldn't hang. Members of the community questioned how SHiFT's behavior would impact the image of their community, while others became hooked on his intense personality. But SHiFT claimed that venting allowed him to cool down after tragic time loss to avoid tilting, and his frequent personal bests seemed to back this up.
Because this run's a good showcase, though. The one thing that went wrong that I attempted was the fucking, the camera angle. And I called the 510, by the way.
This controversy would stay relevant for the remainder of the summer, especially as other runners grew more passionate as well.
You didn't do Sandy's dream!
As summer progressed, the shared endeavor to revive Battle for Bikini Bottom formed a small friend group, which seemed to be a first in the game's history. In the old era, the runners were merely just friendly acquaintances with a shared pastime. But in this new age, the community would break its ice and become something more than just a group of friendly acquaintances. They'd become
The Super Acquaintances! SHiFT in HD! The only thing quicker than his movement on the sticks is his lightning fast wit.
You can't be a pro gamer master assassin if you have bitches to pay for it.
Seriously, dude, what the f are you talking about?
Jared's Giants! With a lifetime of experience in casino gambling, he's bound to erupt if things take a turn.
No! No!
Jelly Swagger, Cole's young ward. Trained from birth by the wise sage, he's genetically engineered to put up with everyone else's bullshit.
Jesus Christ! Fuff, no! Fuff!
And Fuff, the 1/18th, makes the sponge run smooth like maple syrup, or some other Canadian thing. Here one day, gone the next. The international circle jerk of super acquaintances.
And although Cole lurked in the shadows, he'd eventually debut the Mermaid Man profile picture to match the other runners. He'd always been there, just watching silently as the next generation continued what he started. The Super Acquaintances, Konosumi, and some of the other runners that were soon to enter the ring would become the group that revived Battle for Bikini Bottom a second time. Dedicating himself to the grind, SHiFT needed to address an ongoing issue with his Xbox 360 to further optimize the 80% world record. Up until this point, SHiFT's Xbox 360 had some emulation bugs forcing him to do workarounds for some of the strategies Cole and Fuff had used while they grinded 80%. Unable to find another Xbox 360 for sale locally, he ended up buying an original Xbox from a friend in his town just to give it a try. It was believed at this point that the original Xbox was slower than the 360 since the only completed run with it on the leaderboards appeared to have slow loads between zones. Little did they know that with a more updated model, such as the one that SHiFT had just unknowingly acquired, a small bit of time can be saved from each loading screen in BfBB. It was later realized that the switch to OG Xbox saves nearly 1 minute throughout the 80% speedrun. And with an Xbox in good health, these fast loads were also 100% consistent. SHiFT began using the original Xbox on July 10th and quickly got a run that finished in 1 hour, 4 minutes, and 28 seconds. As of this world record, real-time runs had finally eclipsed their tool-assisted counterparts. SHiFT's 104 cut Hazel's task from 2014 by 9 seconds.
Well, that may be, but the task was done on a GameCube emulator, which actually loses minutes in loading times compared to Xbox, so I'd say it isn't even comparable.
Yeah, shut the fuck up. He was pretty happy with his performance, despite not knowing that its level of optimization was likely about the same as his 10510, but with faster load times from the OG Xbox Switch. So suddenly, out of nowhere, 103 was looking possible, and many believed it would be the final minute achieved in Battle for Bikini Bottom 80%. For over a week, SHiFT would get runs on paces barely capable of 103, but they always seemed to crumble deep in the run. At this point, Battle for Bikini Bottom was a lot more optimized than it was back in the old era. Now, 20-second time losses were much more noticeable. Many runs died to the infamous Texas Sponge Glide, found during the sudden boom of strategies immediately following the discovery of cruise boosting many years ago. SHiFT eventually got a run that finished with a 104.21, a world record, yet the exact date is unknown and the VOD no longer exists. But when SHiFT finally got another run past the Nut Glide, he'd be sure to preserve that one.
Holy shit! Holy fucking shit! It's over, boys. It's finally over. Holy shit.
Faster than 106, 105, and 104 left, 103 was now here. The community paraded about how the game had finally reached its limits. But deep down, they knew there was still a lot more work to be done out there. 2 days later, SHiFT broke the 80% world record again with a 103.36, this time using the forbidden skip to save 9 seconds.
Alright, we gotta go for forbidden skip.
It was forbidden because its perceived inconsistency forbade runners from using it, if not to recover runs that were already bad. But as runners started using it more often, it seemed to get a bit better.
Holy shit, I did it.
This trick saved 9 more seconds off the run by landing a precise bowl off of a spiked block to launch toward the bouncing ball spatula. Despite its learning curve, SHiFT was willing to shoehorn it into the run just to have those extra 9 seconds. It seemed at this point, time saves that seemed previously pretty small were starting to look kind of thick. With a new world record 2 days after the first 103, it was clear that the game wasn't getting fully optimized anytime soon.
Jared's gonna fucking global himself again.
But SHiFT was running out of time save again. He brushed through the archives once more, searching for potentially useful strategies that were once phased out or just never implemented. But nothing stood out as useful. Something entirely new was needed, and perhaps the key wasn't as far into the past as he initially thought. When approached by SHiFT for his routing endeavors, Fuff recalled that while running on the GameCube version, he used to collect the Save the Children spatula during his any % runs. This spatula is awarded to SpongeBob after popping the 5 sets of balloons floating around the beach, which the children are clinging to for their dear lives. Mrs. Puff awards you a spatula for saving all of them. Well, most of them. But Fuff had stopped using this strategy after switching to Xbox and opted for Cole's spatula selection instead. The reason why was due to the balloon cycle being impossible to meet on the Xbox version of the game. But to truly understand why, we'll first have to talk about parallel universes. I mean, version differences. Battle for Bikini Bottom's Xbox release made some notable alterations and improvements compared to the GameCube version. Its aspect ratio was slightly wider, and the audio is not compressed or absurdly loud in some areas. And yes, on the Xbox version of Kelp Forest, due to improved lighting effects, you can actually see what you're doing. The textures are also full-sized, unlike on the GameCube version, where they're downscaled to half the original size. And of course, the loading times are faster, but you already knew that. The difference we're focused on for collecting the Save the Children spatula, however, is the increased draw distance on the Xbox version. With this increased range for NPCs and other assets to spawn in when nearing them, the balloon kids would render and begin floating on their set paths much earlier than they would on the GameCube version. Due to the shorter draw distance on GameCube, Fuff could pop all the balloons reliably, as he could get much closer to them before they would spawn. On the Xbox version, taking the same path would leave the balloons scrambled and in terrible locations due to them starting to float around far earlier. But if a cycle that accommodated the Xbox draw distance could be solved, this could be a lightning-fast spatula. And a potential replacement for the extremely slow and casual ballroom puzzle. So the next day after the 103.36, SHiFT spent a day at the beach. To figure out where to start, SHiFT had to first acknowledge that starting by Larry's lifeguard tower was not working. This was the start Fuff had used on GameCube, but as mentioned before, the kids end up in awful locations with the Xbox's draw distance affecting the cycles. And because we're being pushed by a cruise boost, and some pillars sink when you stand on them anyway, waiting around for the cycle is not an option. So instead, SHiFT tried starting from a different area, the sandcastle. It made sense to start here because it is also the respawn point after drowning from collecting the over-the-moat spatula. Upon respawn, the balloon cycles are reset, and the nearby box provides the perfect surface to cruise boost off of. And as it turns out, the kid closest to the sandcastle island ends up in a favorable position even with the Xbox's increased draw distance. SHiFT would therefore make this one the first in the new sequence. However, after respawning, SHiFT only got one shot at hitting the cruise boost inputs. If he failed, SHiFT had to purposely drown in the moat to reset the cycle and try again. After numerous attempts, SHiFT got a segment going where he popped the first set of balloons and approached the next nearest set, which seemed like the obvious option. And, as it turns out, it was also on cycle. 2 down, 3 to go. But the order of the 3 kids on the beach would be less obvious. The nearby kid on the shore seemed like the next in the sequence, but as it turns out, skipping it and going directly to the kid after meets it on a cycle that floats by one of the beach pillars, in the perfect position for the bash. Going straight to the next beach pillar kid from here seemed to work out as well. Finally, returning to save the kid we skipped earlier, which is also conveniently floating right by Mrs. Puff, allows us to complete the sequence of 5 and immediately collect the golden spatula. This seamless sequence also allowed collecting the sock on top of the muscle bar for the low price of 0 seconds. It had been the most satisfying segment that SHiFT had pulled off up until that point, especially with the added difficulty of even initiating it. So, the first set of balloons, as we've mentioned before, requires a first try cruise boost to reach it in time for the cycle. But the added difficulty of hitting the cruise bubble and bubble bowl on the same frame twice under that kind of pressure was just the surface of this strategy. The movement required to nail this trick was far more advanced than any other cruise boost segment up until this point, especially with the added struggle of hitting these moving targets, many of which needed to be bashed while falling off the pillars to even hit them. This led to many failures, and worse yet, the first kid had 2 different cycles it could take, seemingly at random. The kid could either turn sharply into the pillar or continue on in a straight line. Both of these patterns required different timings and positionings for the cruise-boosted bubble bash to pop the balloons. So, on top of having to succeed in the single attempt at the cruise boost, SHiFT also had to react to a 50-50 almost immediately after. And then he had to complete the rest of the cycle with the most advanced cruise boost movement of its time. The rest of the community called him insane for even attempting this in his runs. But after SHiFT finished developing the strategy and timed it to save half a minute over completing the rolling ballroom, there was just no turning back. He'd begin collecting the chum bucket wall jump spatula at the beginning of the run to make up for removing the ballroom. Then add the balloon popping madness after cruise boosting was acquired, adhering to the routing balance of BfBB. It seemed by now the main focus of the 2016 community was ironing out cruise boost movement and pushing it to its limits. Now, world record attempts past Industrial Park had way more to offer than just crossing big gaps and running faster in straight lines, and the fans were loving it. On July 28th, SHiFT achieved 3 world records with the kids route. A better 103.36, a 103.24, which SHiFT apparently never highlighted because it was
So bad. Fuck, that was so bad.
and a 103.19. Though he lost nearly half a minute to saving the kids in his 103.24, the other 2 world records had exemplary displays of this sick new strategy. At this point, the already existing community surrounding BfBB and SHiFT's stream was becoming more and more passionate about the run beyond simply indulging in nostalgia. Other members of the general speedrunning community noticed SHiFT's daily attempts to lower the world record throughout the summer of 2016, and he began to build a significant following solely through speedrunning BfBB. Though many of these new viewers either hadn't grown up with BfBB or were skeptical of how good the game could possibly be, they'd grow to appreciate the new and exciting techniques constantly being developed. The game was now continually evolving, and an organized effort to optimize what many saw as a random cartoon game drew a lot of attention. It seemed the amount of effort going into this speedrun was something that anyone could come to appreciate. Later that same month, both Jared and SHiFT started averaging well over 100 viewers streaming attempts, an all-time high for Battle for Bikini Bottom on Twitch across both distinct eras of the community. Battle for Bikini Bottom was attracting mainstream speedrunning attention, and the numbers showed it. With the sponge moving fast being all the buzz, many were eager to weigh in on the topic. And with constant incoming criticism, pridefulness would develop among our community leaders. But with pride came a sense of commitment as they began to realize the potential their passion project truly had. SHiFT especially began preaching about earning the game the respect it deserved, pledging to regain Battle for Bikini Bottom's acclaim after years of it being pushed aside or forgotten by the world. This attitude was never before seen in this community surrounding the obscure title, and naturally stirred controversy now that all eyes were on them. Even within the community, things weren't all so great. A witness to this era, Perilous Peanut recounts excessive memeing, attitude problems, and desire for community growth at the expense of its grassroots environment. a culture he couldn't take seriously and found quite unpleasant. Of course, Jared and SHiFT found Peanut's attitude toward them unpleasant as well, especially as he became more vocal on these disagreements, drawing some of his friends from other communities into the mix. Though these tensions started small, they would eventually evolve into a larger problem our community leaders would be forced to deal with far down the road. But that's why we're covering this story in 4 parts. Between the controversy surrounding the players' personalities and skepticism of a SpongeBob speedrun, it seemed like most people in the speedrunning community at large had an opinion on the phenomenon. But opinions aside, Battle for Bikini Bottom was making waves. The community's leaders believed that to earn the game the acclaim they felt it deserved, they'd have to push the run to its absolute limits and cram in as many exciting and risky strategies as possible. Each new world record, advanced strategy, or competitively driven runner on the leaderboard felt like a solid step in the right direction. They had a mission to accomplish, and the grind had only just begun. In July of 2016, Kona had finally tied up his loose ends and finished learning to speedrun BfBB through SHiFT's tutorial video. He kept the game as one of his side focuses while preparing for his showcase of Ed, Ed, and Eddie the Misadventures in the mainstream speedrunning marathon, Summer Games Done Quick. During this showcase, he'd put on an outstanding display for over 100,000 viewers to see, and gained quite a following from it. After GDQ, Kona decided to make Battle for Bikini Bottom his main focus for a while.
But yeah, man, I want to bop Jelly once and for all. Well, until he returns, but still, I want to bop him. And then he'll probably bop me right back.
Kona's streams of BfBB averaged over 200 viewers throughout his grind for sub 110, during which some of the summer's most iconic memories were made.
Okay, let's go. It actually happened. Can this 110? Oh no, dude. I messed up bad.
The success of Kona's stream rubbed off on SHiFT's and Jared's as well, as they both began averaging 150 to 180 viewers on their daily grinds. With 3 different options to watch the run, all catering to different preferences, BfBB continued to gain that hot traction. Kona and SHiFT eventually began applying for Twitch partnerships toward the end of the summer, for which they were declined each time despite averaging as many viewers as they were.
Oh, I got an email back from partner. Let's see if I got accepted or declined. Yeah, it looks like it's a decline.
At this time, partnership requirements were extremely vague, and it took a lot of persistence to attract the attention of the bigwigs. But with such a huge burst in growth and motivation to grind not going anywhere anytime soon, the community knew it was only a matter of time before they'd get their very own Twitch partner.
Who's your daddy?
The partnership program could help attract even more fans to rediscover the game forgotten and twice revived. With this conviction, the Battle for Bikini Bottom speedrunners became dead set on making it happen. Having established himself as the fastest BfBB speedrunner by far, SHiFT knew he'd have to continue pushing his own limits to keep the game's progression interesting. The expectations were now higher than ever before during this era of non-stop world records. Fans piled in as they knew one could happen at any time. And just before dawn on July 31st, SHiFT achieved the first 102 only 3 days after his 103.19. With constant world record uploads, SHiFT's YouTube channel started to gain more traction, and by association, the rest of the BfBB community continued moving further into the limelight. Even the comments sections started to get their own regulars.
Bruh, you're insane.
These runs included gradual optimizations nearly every time. Anyone checking in could clearly see the work invested into these runs by SHiFT and the rest of the community. But these tiny optimizations were going to become far more important if 101 was ever going to happen. The game's available time saves were far smaller at this point with the community's current understanding of the game mechanics. Some routing changes were only made just to save menu scrolls now. SHiFT would need to dig deep to push the current route further. He disappeared for a few days and returned with new motivation to push the time past yet another minute threshold. Amidst the grind for 101 and the hype surrounding Battle for Bikini Bottom, August introduced several new community members. They'd become friendly with some of the original super acquaintances, and some others who'd been around during the old era rejoined as well. Red Moss, soon to complete his first run of BfBB, and Chris the Fast, soon to complete his second, both re-emerged after having been absent for years. In due time, Ringo Tongo and Red Moss would become better friends with Jared, Jelly, and SHiFT. The 5 would form a larger friend circle based around enjoying their new favorite pastime, Viewers could tune in to any of their streams and find the others in the same call, grinding away at those cruise boosts. At this point, the community had become closer and more intertwined than ever before, and with so many streams occurring simultaneously, there was almost always a place to watch Battle for Bikini Bottom throughout each day. With so many outlets to watch the game, prospective runners continued to gain interest. The group made sure to keep the full Any Percent tutorial, along with the portal to their friends' streams, readily available for anyone tuning in. It was a tight network dedicated to improving their game while making memories along the way. By now, it was also clear that all of the top runners were more than happy to pick up the Xbox version of BfBB to further their improvement. And new runners felt encouraged to try the game with whichever version they already owned. After all, they could just upgrade to Xbox later in pursuit of more competitive times. This culture was forwarded to prospective runners by the 5 friends, and the tutorial series they'd use to rebuild their game's player base. Unmotivated and off the radar were no longer terms that could be used to describe the Battle for Bikini Bottom community. As summer faded out, Battle for Bikini Bottom's presence continued spreading further. Even some bigger names on Twitch would take interest in Battle for Bikini Bottom during this time, streaming first-time playthroughs to get a taste of what all the hype was about. And of course, they took interest in the passionate community surrounding the game as well. At this point, speedrunning and Battle for Bikini Bottom had become inseparable. And with so many new faces rallying behind the community, they needed one main event to tie together the happenings of that fateful summer. On August 11th, 2016, SHiFT improved the Any Percent world record again, this time by 2 seconds. A 6-second improvement happened the next day. 2 days later, he pulled off a huge world record, shaving off nearly half a minute.
Whoa!
If you think that's crazy, just wait till you hear this. This run still had plenty of opportunities for improvement that just seemed to come out of, well, no place conspicuous.
Without any major, and with very few minor changes to the strategy set, SHiFT was saving huge chunks of time just from optimizing his own movement and adding more cruise boosts to the run. In the past, cruise boosting was only used sparingly in areas where the speed boost was needed to make spatulas viable for the run. But now, seeing as Battle for Bikini Bottom's route was far more optimized, saving a couple of seconds per cruise boost was actually significant if the player could hit them on the first attempt consistently. Around this time, Fuff also discovered that Larry's collision box is actually a huge rectangular prism. Though invisible, it was the perfect surface for cruise boosting, and marked the start of runners cruise boosting off of certain flat NPCs to avoid walking to the nearest wall. SHiFT began referencing Hazel's 2014 tasks in hopes of implementing some of the more difficult and obscure movement strategies into his runs, and began skipping the rotating shipwreck wall jumps with the use of cruise boosting. Fuff's 100% endeavors also led to more strat discoveries in the Any Percent run, such as the new route for Squidward's Dream that awards a sock for the low price of 0 seconds.
Those prices are fantastic. We're not going to do better than that.
These creative uses of cruise boosting marked an era when Battle for Bikini Bottom became a far more movement-centric speedrun versus just simply nailing setups for difficult tricks. This particular run was looking like a lost cause, but SHiFT ended up finishing with a time of 1:02:18 after coming back from a 24-second deficit, closing out a new world record by 3 seconds. With big comeback runs and the nearing of 101, the summer of 2016 was destined to go out with a bang. Runs paced for 101 would nearly reach 200 live viewers, as they knew something big would happen soon. Nearly a week later, on August 25th, 2016, SHiFT was on his best pace ever. Half a minute ahead of the 1:02:18 out of Jellyfish 2, and still within a minute of some of Best leaving the graveyard. At this point, the fans were on the edges of their seats. SHiFT entered Sandy's Dream to perform the Texas Sponge Glide. Nearly an hour into the run, only this and the Robo Sponge stood between him and the coveted 101.
What the fuck was that bullshit?
And now the fans would wait for SHiFT's response to said bullshit.
Whatever, still a good run. That sucks though. Whatever.
His reaction to such a heartbreaking loss was in stark contrast to those of similar misfortunes at the start of the summer, and he was even able to keep his head straight enough to close out a new world record with that same run.
Don't get globaled yet, because we're going again.
It was clear by now that SHiFT was improving at managing stress in front of live audiences, and with that, his attempts became astronomically better. Later that same day, SHiFT tied the summer's resurgence of Battle for Bikini Bottom, the resilience of the community, and his own self-growth into one speedrun.
Dropping the mic.
The 101.46 became one of SHiFT's most iconic runs, gaining significant traction on YouTube and causing him to reach the 1,000 subscriber mark on the platform. And over on Twitch, the movement was growing stronger than ever. With the game's popularity skyrocketing, the 2016 community knew they had what it took to avenge Cole and the other retired runners from the previous era. They began discussing the possibility of Battle for Bikini Bottom being accepted to games done quick. The game was rejected unconditionally in the past when Cole and Hazel tried submitting to GDQ events, even dating back to 2013. Hazel even went as far to plan out her talking points for commentary had the game actually been accepted, staying hopeful each and every time. It was something that meant the world to them, a chance to display their years of ingenuity on a stage for thousands to enjoy. And now, the next generation of runners believed that they could make that dream a reality. SHiFT submitted Battle for Bikini Bottom any % to Awesome Games Done Quick 2017. The Winter Marathon was poised to be the largest ever, and BfBB had its best shot at finally getting in. Before the summer's revival of Battle for Bikini Bottom, Kona consulted GDQ committee member Vuligin regarding the possibility of BfBB's premiere in the marathon, who claimed there just wasn't enough evidence that SpongeBob and speedrunning had enough crossover audience to make it work. Well, just 4 months later, Battle for Bikini Bottom had taken the speedrunning community by storm. The evidence was laid out for everyone to see, and SHiFT just had to write a pitch to convince the committee to finally lay the 6-time rejection curse to rest. And needless to say, Cole was watching silently from the shadows. SHiFT published his AGDQ 2017 submission video for BfBB any % on September 3rd, 2016. You may have already guessed by the splits, but just 4 days earlier, SHiFT broke the world record again with a 101.38. He just could not stop. Between the first and the second 101, SHiFT found a 5-second time save for collecting the spelunking spatula in Jellyfish Caves, naming it Rock Skip because you jump on the rocks to get the spatula. Are these even rocks? Yeah. Okay. The new risky maneuver and potential run ruiner would be showcased in the 101.38 and again in the 101.14 achieved on September 9th, 2016. Then, on the attempt immediately following the 101.14, SHiFT finished with a time of 101.04. Small movement improvements and increased hours of grinding had pushed the current route further than anyone believed possible, with very few major changes allowing the next minute mark to nearly be cleared. Following this PB, however, SHiFT finally hit an improvement wall. But exactly 2 weeks later, SHiFT would complete a run that would shock everyone. One flat 32. In the aftermath of this run, eyewitness accounts state that SHiFT uttered something that few could comprehend, but that sounded something like this. To this day, this is regarded as one of the most optimized world records in the game's history, and it marked the end of an era in the any % world record progression. SHiFT had completed a run with so few mistakes, it would go on to initiate the first world record drought caused solely by optimization of the run, as opposed to long hiatuses. Despite grinding for multiple hours each day, this time would stand untouched for a while, in comparison to the veritable grab bag of summer records. Chat and community reactions to this run were in stark contrast to those of the first 101. Ringo cites that there was a level of sadness watching this run finish off, realizing that the game's progression might have actually reached a dead end. And things certainly did start to slow down for the next month. For their knowledge at the time, the run had been shredded down to its core, revealing what everyone believed would be the final, crowning achievement in Battle for Bikini Bottom speedrunning: the 59. For titles of past, present, and future, taking a full digit off the run was viewed as the holy grail for communities optimizing games clocking in at just above the 60-minute mark. And with the world record now wedged right between the hour and the 101 marks, debates sprang up over whether or not it was even possible. To give you some perspective, Hazel's and Old School's unfinished tool-assisted speedrun from 2015 was only attempting to cut the hour mark. But SHiFT believed that there was still room to push the game further. He felt an intense grind could eventually make the sub-1 dream a reality. He and the rest of the community acknowledged that any time saves coming solely from better movement would be extremely gradual at this point. The game would need new strategies added with the sole intention of barely achieving a 59, thereby finishing off the progression of Battle for Bikini Bottom any percent. If these wicked strats happened to work in just one run, while everything else was near perfect, it would be just enough for SHiFT to become the first to beat the game in under 1 hour. And in support of these endeavors, the community rallied close behind. With their own resilience having thrust their beloved title into the limelight 13 years after its initial release, they knew that anything was possible.
Yeah. It's been a ride. Grinding Bob. Losing runs. I guess I had to lose those runs to get to this one. Now some of you might still be trying to get that pace. If you're trying to get out, just remember, you could be doing this shit.
SHiFT had foreseen the hard stop for the game's progress in the 1 hour range and had already been working on a plan to achieve the 59. He referred to it as Route Z, which truly encompassed the meaning of whatever it takes for the time it was implemented to achieve. Earlier that month, SHiFT had gone digging into Cole's video archives once again in search of more forgotten strategies. He rediscovered the older method for skipping Jellyfish Field Zone 1, which lured a hammer to jump off of and activate the checkpoint at the end of the level rather than using Jellyfish Rock Skip. This method wouldn't save time enough on its own, due to the significant time lost from needing a replacement for the sock on Jellyfish Rock. He'd need to make it
even faster.
On September 17th, SHiFT uploaded a video called Hammer Skip, which showcased a clean, modernized hammer AI manipulation where he also jumped off the hammer's head, but this time set up a damage boost. By inputting a frame-perfect triple jump out of the boost, the cliff could be cleared without waiting for SpongeBob to drown and respawn. As a quick refresher, the window to hit these types of jumps is only open for 1/60th of a second after SpongeBob's damage animation ends. On top of that, there are 5 different animations to react to, each with different visual cues and muscle memory. Cole made use of these jumps in a couple spots when he ran the game, but the key difference with Hammer Skip was the risk factor. Missing the old school fountain jump or the Goo Lagoon tower jump to the sock landed the player on safe ground to try again. Each miss only cost a few seconds. With Hammer Skip, however, there was the added potential of drowning and having to reset the whole run if the 1-frame input was missed. There was a checkpoint backup, but relying on it saved such minimal time that in most cases it was worth the reset anyway. Factoring in the sock reroute, the trick only saved 8 seconds. With the level of risk and execution required on top of the degree of optimization the game was already reaching, the addition of this strategy would make it far more difficult to get runs going. But SHiFT's next implementation would truly test his limits. So, if you recall from part 1, the Rock Bottom Museum was re-added to the any percent route during the community's grind for sub 120, which was one of the many spatulas swapped in place of others throughout the run. This was due to a new exploit Hazel found during the summer of 2013, which allowed her to pass through the laser walls without deactivating them. By grabbing the moving tire lamps, she clipped right past the lasers without having to go through the museum's tedious puzzles. And because of Sandy's gliding ability, this character was definitely the one for the job. But 3 years later, with cruise boosting having been discovered and its movement mechanics being pushed further than ever before, it was time for a different approach. This time, SHiFT would prove it's possible to save time clearing the museum as SpongeBob. On September 20th, 2016, SHiFT uploaded this segment and an improvement upon it later that same day that showcased the most advanced cruise boost movement of its time. By landing a precise bubble bounce on the rotating turret nodes, it's possible to climb to the 3rd level of the museum, jump a huge gap, and grab one of the moving tire lamps to clip through the wall. Unlike the Sandy method, which allowed for gliding across the gap at a nearly set altitude, gravity was in full effect. To make the stakes even higher, any mistake between loading into the level and clipping through the laser wall would force a level reload, and most of the time, a run reset. This is because missing a cruise boost, grabbing a ledge, or even stepping out of place can cost enough time for SpongeBob to miss the tire cycle. Even the window to ledge grab was tighter, as the ledge get up animation automatically triggers upon grabbing, and Sandy's get up animation is twice as long as SpongeBob's. In order to properly clip through the lasers, you must be in the ledge get up animation when colliding with them. In other words, SpongeBob's window to correctly grab the ledge for clipping is half the size of Sandy's. This, along with the added difficulty of falling onto the moving ledge rather than hovering into it, made this first section of the new museum strategy the most fearsome segment in the entire game thus far. It had to be timed perfectly. And after clipping, SHiFT still had to go through the second part of the gauntlet. Having lost his cruise boost from taking laser damage, he now had to reach the balcony to activate another one. By spacing a precise jump across the tires on the other side of the wall, it's possible to skip the ledge grab by barely skimming the surface of them. This was important to execute properly, as grabbing a ledge could cost a second and a half, and outright failing would checkpoint SHiFT on the bottom level of the museum, forcing him to restart the level. After making it to the balcony, SHiFT then had to nail the cruise boost used for making it to the next tire, which he would use to clip through the second laser wall. This tire was actually the same one used to clear the level as Sandy. But this time, rather than just being able to slowly glide to it, SpongeBob has to remove his cruise boost, drop below the tire, turn 180 degrees, and grab the ledge to secure the clip through the wall.
What?
Without a cruise boost active, SpongeBob regains his standard turning speed, which allows him to make that 180-degree turn to grab the ledge. After doing so, SHiFT can grab the collectibles on the other side of the second laser wall and finish the segment. Throughout 2016's evolution of cruise boosting segments, this was the crowning jewel. These jumps, leaps, and maneuvers allowed SpongeBob to meet the same cycle as Sandy if done perfectly. Because the strategy made the same tire cycle that Sandy could, the only time saved came from not having to switch to Sandy at the bus stop outside of the museum. Balloon Kids were pretty scary, but this was just absurd. The full strategy was quickly named SpongeBob Museum and saved merely 5 seconds off of the any % run for all of that extra effort. The additions of SpongeBob Museum and Hammer Skip as part of Route Z solidified the 1-flat-32 as the end of any %'s unoptimized era, and it marked the beginning of the run's degeneration into a showcase of desperate maneuvers, for barely any time save relative to what they'd expected before. Now, world record improvements weren't expected to be greater than mere seconds, and not nearly as frequent. SHiFT hoped to eventually achieve a low 1-hour time with Route Z, acknowledging the many stressful weeks and months ahead on the road to the ultimate prize. During this time, when Battle for Bikini Bottom's world record had finally found stability, the inner circle of friends began organizing community events. Though Kona had announced his retirement from BfBB back in August and Jared had since gone on hiatus from streaming, the community still had one of their 3 large channels to broadcast their next group endeavor: the revival of speedrun races. Having been a huge motivator for completing runs during the old era, the 2016 community rediscovered the fun in racing and decided to turn it up a notch. Instead of organizing group races for leisure like Cole and Hazel had done on SRL, the new community went with a double elimination tournament format on Challenge. This seemed like a fitting adjustment for the community's own heightening competitive spirit in its second revival. Now the runners' gameplay feeds were restreamed to SHiFT's channel while friends outside the races commentated together.
Could he PV? Yeah, he probably could.
It's looking pretty, it's pretty one-sided right now. Oh my god.
like a frame away from death there. Jesus Christ.
That was
I
like
think that both of them can PB.
And these streams were quite successful, often peaking at over 300 viewers and creating many memorable moments.
He's ahead by so much.
Save time here.
If he goes for it, he's insane. He's actually crazy if he goes for it.
Oh,
What?
that was almost so cool.
If he got that
That
ledge
would have been the
grab.
coolest thing in the world.
And of course, it introduced SHiFT's viewers to some of the other community members that they weren't aware of, while giving newer members a chance to get involved.
Boff is kecking in chat now.
Battle for Bikini Bottom's close-knit group of friends was evolving into an expansive community.
Very close to Tongo!
Oh my god.
No fucking way! You had a really great run.
Yeah.
man.
I mean, I was not focused by the third one. I had a lot of fun though. This is definitely the best set I've ever had.
Dude, you had like almost 500 people at one point. Almost 500 people watching you.
Yeah, I played better than I ever had. So how can you be upset about that? And Red Moss deserves it anyway. He's a god. He's a great friend, a great player.
With a community of runners grinding for improvement, a respectably optimized world record, and viewership still on the rise, many were hoping that Battle for Bikini Bottom would finally hit the big time. On October 5th, 2016, the community gathered in the Battle for Bikini Bottom Discord server to repeatedly refresh the Games Done Quick submissions page. After midnight, the list of accepted games for HDQ 2017 would finally become available. Having witnessed many years of Cole's submissions being rejected, Jelly especially hoped that BfBB's recent explosion in popularity would finally cause a miracle to happen. And at midnight on October 6th, anxiety would erupt into excitement. Battle for Bikini Bottom Any Percent was accepted to HDQ 2017. This would be the first time BfBB, or any SpongeBob game for that matter, would be played at a Games Done Quick event. And though their reactions have unfortunately been lost to time, legend has it that tears of joy were shed on this day. After years of rejection, BfBB was finally free. One step closer to the dream, SHiFT would now select the commentary couch for the upcoming showcase, where thousands would realize that one of their old favorites had not been left behind. At this point, Cole and Hazel had emerged from the shadows after hearing that their passion project had been accepted to the marathon, so SHiFT's absolute priority was to have them both by his side while showing the world how far their game had come. But unfortunately, due to travel complications, Hazel was unable to attend the event. Therefore, the final couch for the Battle for Bikini Bottom Any Percent showcase would be Jelly, Red Moss, and Cole himself. A union of runners across generations together for a last hurrah. Through hosting race marathons on SHiFT's channel, the community was able to raise just enough money to crowdfund Cole's trip to Awesome Games Done Quick 2017. With Battle for Bikini Bottom's premiere in the mainstream spotlight upcoming, SHiFT's motivation to master Route Z and achieve 59 was now stronger than ever. His mind was now set on beating the game in under 1 hour before the grand showcase in January. Later that same month, another huge step forward was made for the Battle for Bikini Bottom community and SHiFT's stream. On October 17th, SHiFT's persistence with applications had finally paid off.
SHiFT, come on down. You're now a partnered streamer. How does it feel, buddy? This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
SHiFT became partnered on Twitch through streaming speedruns, strat hunting, and community events of exclusively Battle for Bikini Bottom. Before 2016, this was an unthinkable feat. But in the new era, it seemed like the sky was the limit. Making its first appearance in April and now already partnered in October, SHiFT's stream became a symbol of Battle for Bikini Bottom's popularity explosion throughout 2016. With the game having grown such a strong and passionate community 13 years after its release, who knew how much more was in store for it? With a partnered Twitch channel and a network of friends dedicated to streaming the game, Battle for Bikini Bottom's future was looking brighter than ever before. 10 days after the partnership announcement, SHiFT set a world record in BfBB Any Percent with the newly added strategies. This run also showcased an exemplary SpongeBob museum and overall time save that proved sub 1 could happen within the coming months. But it was clear with the execution and consistency required to save that time that it wouldn't be easy. At this point, Battle for Bikini Bottom's most difficult strategies had shifted from setup-based, elaborate tricks into fast-paced, movement-intensive sections. The museum's execution being so tight to save those 5 juicy seconds made holding paces far more difficult, and the stakes were way higher after getting a run past this dreaded zone. And after passing the museum, SHiFT still wasn't in the clear. He still had to pass Balloon Kids, Rock Skip, Texas Glide, Graveyard, and RoboSponge to close out a personal best. All of that, combined with the added pressure of achieving the first 59, made stress levels higher than ever, and that was especially clear to the viewers.
Oh, thank the fucking...
It took almost an entire month of grinding to improve this record as well. On November 21st, 2016, SHiFT completed an any percent run in 1 hour and 12 seconds, a 3-second personal best, and also a run that no longer has video evidence. This 1 flat 12 was never actually a world record. Earlier that same day, SHiFT achieved another 1 flat 12 that he never highlighted, despite it being 1/10 of a second faster than the one you're seeing now.
You know what? I'm gonna upload this one. The other one was just like, this is just a better run, you know? I played better, I played riskier. It may not be the actual world record, but I'm just gonna upload it.
This 1 flat 12 is the one that's still watchable today. The second 1 flat 12 lost 20 seconds to RoboPatrick's Phase 3 spins. At this point in time, the strategy for Phase 3 spin manipulations was still inconsistent, and due to the run's new level of optimization, the quality of spins in Industrial Park Phase 3 became critical for holding 59 pace. It seemed the game had gotten so much tighter that parts of the run previously not feared were becoming potential run ruiners due to less room for error. But even so, a 1 flat 12 with 20 seconds lost to RoboPatrick made it seem like 59 was just around the corner, and the hype surrounding Battle for Bikini Bottom continued to grow stronger. Not long after the 1 flat 12 was achieved, the previous world record skyrocketed in popularity on YouTube, breaking 100,000 views in just a matter of days during the Thanksgiving holiday. Of course, many of these new eyes were curious to experience live runs of Battle for Bikini Bottom, and headed on over to Twitch to watch SHiFT's grind for the 59. Among this huge influx of newcomers, a good portion hadn't even seen or played BfBB before, yet were enticed by its unique gameplay that they were now witnessing. To this new, passionate crowd, this was how the game was meant to be played. Battle for Bikini Bottom had transcended the constraints of nostalgic reminiscence. It had been reborn, redefined by the gameplay and features its own community had molded upon it. It had become something greater. With unprecedented community growth complementing a newly updated any percent tutorial, the final months of 2016 brought Battle for Bikini Bottom its greatest rush of new runners yet. As more rallied behind the journey, the grind for 59 continued with full vigor. Viewership rising, pressure rising, tension at its most palpable. And it may have started getting to SHiFT's head. On December 9th, he finished in 1 hour and 4 seconds. Unlike runs he was getting a month prior where 1 or 2 major mistakes struck the final blow, this run appeared to have a lot of mistakes. SHiFT's movement was improving, and some minor optimizations were added to enhance the run's potential, but it seemed like he was hitting a mental wall at the 1 hour mark. 59 was no longer a matter of being barely achieved with a near-perfect run, as assumed months prior. It was now looking extremely doable, and SHiFT's greatest adversary was himself. Well, that, and the floating wheel in the sky. For all of 2016, this was the ultimate point of contention for all BfBB speedrunners.
This trick ruined my fucking life.
Yeah, I had sex with some girls after I told them I knew how to.
Texas Sponge Glide.
It was pretty.
Meaningless sex.
Texas Sponge Glide had been found during the explosion of new strategies following Cruise Boosting's discovery in 2014. And nearly 3 years later, it was still an enigma. The runners just could not figure out what caused the glide to stick or send SpongeBob skydiving feet first. The added pressure of having to perform after finally landing the Texas Glide caused many graveyard chokes as well, as seen in the record of 1 flat 04. But on December 22nd, SHiFT finally got a run out of the Dutchman's graveyard. Entering Robo SpongeBob slightly behind, a lucky robot spawn was needed to make an early damage boost for skipping the final gauntlet inside of Robo SpongeBob. At a 50% spawn rate, the alternative damage boost saves 2 seconds over the standard explosion boost method. The potential for a new world record was at the mercy of a coin toss. And by now, SHiFT had implemented a personal best playback camera to compare his current best times to his live attempts. Just look at how close the end of this run truly was.
Robot's brain. Oh, that's gotta sting.
SHiFT PB'd by 1 second, 59 barely out of reach once again. At this point, SHiFT was getting some paces with potential to improve his time by over half a minute. A big PB was overdue, and 59 could happen on any run. But still, 1 hour and 3 seconds would become the final BfBB 80% world record achieved in that year. Battle for Bikini Bottom's 2016 began with hopeful retirees waiting for a miracle, and finished with an expansive, lively community having experienced several. More than 9 minutes of world record improvement, a set showcase in Games Done Quick, a partnered stream on Twitch, prospects of a sub-hour run, and, most importantly, a close group of friends whose shared love for the game would inspire runners for generations to come. And although the historic year had finally reached a close, the era was yet to be concluded. One day after the new year, SHiFT realized that while practicing, he may have found a solution for the dreaded Texas Sponge Glide.
I think I discovered the trick to making this consistent. You see how the wheel moves up and down, and you run up to here? That's the same every time. So depending on who you are, and this is the reason why like you have like phases when you get it or phases when you don't get it, is because as you get faster at the game, you're approaching the wheel at a different time. Sandy's Dream, I got a 52. I think it's highly likely to miss this on a 51.
Great.
And then you get a 52, it's because you missed a cruise boost or you're standing next to the bus stop for too long. Like remember in my PB, I stood next to the bus stop for like a half a second before I jumped. I think if you slam into the wheel as it's moving up, you get it every time.
Therefore, the new strategy was to jump toward the wheel the moment it started falling. That way, once SpongeBob reaches the wheel and slams, it's perfectly timed to push up and against the slam. And testing this theory gave evidence to its credit. SHiFT started doing runs with this new strategy and nailed the Texas Sponge Glide each and every time. After losing countless 59s to this late-game monstrosity, it appeared to have finally been solved. Not to mention, another arcane, field-based gatekeeper from the Cole era had been slain. Without this major roadblock or fears of losing runs in Texas past the 50-minute mark, SHiFT was now fully confident in his ability to beat the game in under 1 hour. 2 days later, SHiFT started his usual stream, completely silent. Usually being so talkative, it came as a surprise to the hundreds who gathered daily in hopes of witnessing the fabled 59. But SHiFT had apparently lost his voice from illness and told everyone not to expect the run to define an era on this day. And surely enough, he was right. They'd get both of them.
You wanna see me do it again?
so this is actually crazy. I did not see this coming. I think the only real mistake in the run was hammer skip. So I think this time is going to sit for a really long time.
On January 4th, 2017, the Battle for Bikini Bottom community slept soundly, knowing their game had finally been beaten in under 1 hour. At 59 before the long-awaited showcase and Games Done Quick, just as envisioned. But later that same day, they'd wake up to an exemplary run of Route Z, a sub 59:30. SHiFT plowed through 6 minutes of improvement that even Cole believed was impossible. At the start of the summer, SHiFT became the champion of the community's humble speedrun leaderboards. But after 6 months, 26 world records, and 4,000 attempts, SHiFT had championed Battle for Bikini Bottom itself. His crusade to uplift the game through the art of speedrunning proved that every hour, minute, and second of it could be cherished, and that this unlikely cartoon game suddenly bestowed with so much affection still had so much more to give. The Battle for Bikini Bottom had only just begun. 10 days after the 59s, it would be the community's time to shine. The Battle for Bikini Bottom 80% in HDQ was scheduled for January 14th, 2017 at 9 a.m. Eastern Time. Cole's trip was fully funded and the other couch members were good to go. Things were looking good until the morning of, when the run was pushed back half an hour earlier on the schedule, and then half an hour earlier again. With the hour-long run now scheduled for 8 a.m., the community feared that many waking up to see the run at 9 a.m. would miss the whole thing, that the turnout for the community's most coveted moment would flop. But nonetheless, at 8 a.m., SHiFT stepped up to the plate, Cole, Red Moss, and Jelly by his side. No matter the outcome, this would be historic. Cole and SHiFT, the faces of the game during their respective eras, alongside 2 runners who had witnessed both revivals of the community, would demonstrate how they'd elevated Battle for Bikini Bottom beyond what anyone believed possible.
Also, you did in fact hear me say that correctly. The next game is SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom. Every now and then, a game inexplicably takes over the speedrun community. And SpongeBob SquarePants is one of those games. Suddenly found itself an entire community of players. And they've really pushed the game, so look forward to that coming up in just a moment.
Okay. All right, here we are. This is the day. We play SpongeBob for the first time ever in GDQ. I'm SHiFT on the couch. You guys can introduce yourselves.
Okay, I'm Cole.
I'm Red Moss.
I'm Jelly.
All right, and we're going to start the run. 3, 2, 1, go. Yes, this is a licensed video game, but you guys are going to be entertained, trust me. At first try.
Nice.
There we go.
That was really good.
And everyone has their own little setup for this trick too.
According to all known laws of aviation, the sponge should not be able to fly. And we got a first try. We got a first try, nice.
Oh, wow.
Usually you'd have to go through this whole process of waiting for him to slam. Thanks, guys. Took a lot of practice for that one. We're coming up to Hey Kid.
Hey Kid.
There it is. And we're coming up, and time.
90,000 watched live as SHiFT disabled the hand on the jellyfish taxi pad, curious to see what this SpongeBob game from 2003 had to offer. And by the time SHiFT hit the final fuse, that number had doubled. 180,000 watched live as SHiFT performed the game's most iconic tricks, even nailing Hammer Skip and SpongeBob Museum for all to see.
Big day for the SpongeBob speedrunning community. Took us years to get this game in, right, Cole?
Yeah, like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, we had to. That's why we had to get Cole out here. We all raised money to bring him out. Cole was the original runner of this game. Gave us the baseline for what this game is today. We probably wouldn't even. None of us would be here without him right now. So I'd like to give a shout out, personal shout out to Cole right here on the couch. Everybody give a round of applause for Cole. Also, I'd like to give a shout out to Hazel. She's a really talented tasser, and she actually was the original router for this game. I'd also like to give shout outs to Jared's Giants and Ringo Tongo. They're both very talented runners, and they care about the game a lot. They really wanted to come here, so I'd just like to shout them out. You guys were not forgotten. Shout out just the entire community for making this possible, supporting everybody, and getting SpongeBob in a GDQ. Who would have thought, like, this game's really taking everybody by surprise, and you guys too for supporting.
The run was such an overwhelming success that SHiFT was offered a personal interview and opportunity to answer tweets from viewers live immediately afterward. And there were plenty of questions to be asked, seeing as the GDQ Twitter feed had been posting nothing but SpongeBob over the past hour. Battle for Bikini Bottom had become a sensation. The showcase run even caught the attention of Jason Horner, the lead software developer of Battle for Bikini Bottom during his time working at Heavy Iron Studios back in 2003. Jason reached out to SHiFT, congratulating him on his run and expressing his happiness for his own passion project living on in the hands of its own community. He was also more than willing to confirm many of the suspicions the community had about the inner workings of Battle for Bikini Bottom, even how it was developed. Not surprisingly, Jason was the one responsible for the game's smooth, unique physics engine that they'd all come to love, and it was no easy task getting it to that point. In an effort to polish and perfect what he refers to as his favorite game he worked on throughout his career, Jason went above and beyond Heavy Iron's Call of Duty and took it upon himself to maintain 65-hour work weeks developing Battle for Bikini Bottom. Jason's extra hours served to combat the game's low budget and rush development, and evidently, those hours paid off. It seems determination and resilience run deep in the bloodline of this unsuspecting video game that thrived against all odds. Later that year, even Heavy Iron itself acknowledged an article written about SHiFT and the rest of the community surrounding their magnum opus. But following the overwhelming success of the showcase and Games Done Quick, these wouldn't be the only developers gaining interest in Battle for Bikini Bottom. After 6 years of build-up, Battle for Bikini Bottom had reached heights surpassing anything its original runners could have ever dreamed of. By the end of 2015, it was looking like it could only ever exist in a dream. But having built a strong foundation of fascinating gameplay, we now know it was only a matter of time before fresh motivation was enticed to relight the original community's torch. In the end, all it took to reshape their game's future was sheer determination and true friendship. The runners of 2016 created their own foundations for a passionate community that would thrive for years to come. Along the way, they'd overcome many challenges and demotivators inhibiting the community from reaching its potential, all while gracefully transitioning Battle for Bikini Bottom into the new and competitive era of speedrunning. And, needless to say, they'd too made its gameplay even sicker. But what felt like the natural, satisfying conclusion to our story was just the mid-season finale. The remainder of the decade would truly test the limits of Battle for Bikini Bottom's potential, as well as the strength of its own community. With their gazes aimed high, they entrusted SHiFT to lead the way. But how much further could Battle for Bikini Bottom be pushed past the sub-hour mark? How would SHiFT adapt to such a dramatic increase in influence and responsibility? Were the community's foundations strong enough to withstand the masses of incoming exposure? All of these questions and more will be answered, but in due time. Our stories of camaraderie and personal growth will be covered in 2 parts to complete our saga. But in the meantime, we sincerely wish you the best experience with Battle for Bikini Bottom Rehydrated. When we return, we'll dive right into everything leading up to the announcement that made waves around the world. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I'm SM Loader. See you all in the new era.
Subscribe and ring that bell to know when parts 3 and 4 are available to watch.
Hey, B-Sauce.
The international circle jerk of super acquaintances.
What the fuck was that bullshit?
Oh my god.
Some of you might be still trying to get that pay.
Hey!
Yeah, 2024, he goes,
Relax, those last 4 albums were whack now. Now this new shit is the fact now.
4 coined the strategy L clipping as you achieve the trick by mashing the shit out of the L controller. I picked it up, man. As you achieve the trick by mashing the shit out of the L trigger.
Where the fuck did the nunchucks go? It's in the Slim Shady Records or I'll kill your ass now.
Hey, B-sauce. Okay, wait, I can't.
I can't.
Confidential sources tell me that there are 32 of a specific kind of Easter egg throughout this video. If you find them all, guess what you get? Not a goddamn thing. And if you're not in the know about what I'm laying down, well, why should I talk to you?
Thanks for watching.
Oh my god. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for making this an amazing night. And by the way, if you guys didn't see the tweets and everything, I said this when I remember in the beginning. I forgot to hit start streaming because I was just freaking out. I said this offline, but all the proceeds, all the donation revenue, subs and everything, that's all going to the Rehydrated Relief. So I'm donating that all. We're going to go host the BfBB Triathlon right now. Like I said before, by the way, it's on YouTube now. If you want to go rewatch it for any particular reason, you might want to go back and rewatch certain parts of the video to perhaps look for some stuff. That's on YouTube right now. Make sure you go leave a like, a comment, share to your friends, show everybody. This is I really want this video. I want everybody to see this before they play the new game. I want this to be what people use to get into Rehydrated for real. This is what I want everybody. I want everybody to know how far this game has come before they play that game, to know how much weight is behind it and how amazing it is that this ever even happened. It's just, it's incredible. I can't believe it. So we're gonna host the Battle for Bikini Bottom community channel. I'm not sure if they're online right now. Let me just check.
Money.
Yep. So even right now, like all the donations and subs that we get, I'm giving to the charity. So just letting you know, here we're gonna host it now. I think it's live now. Okay, they just went live. All right, guys, this is gonna be awesome. All right, so you guys are now getting to the main event. Okay, BfBB community.
Money.
Okay, thank you so much for the donations, everybody in Rack. Thank you so much, man. So. Battle for Bikini Bottom Triathlon. We're going to rate them, yeah. Battle for Bikini Bottom Triathlon. We're going to rate right now. 3 teams of 3 players will face off in the 3 main categories of Battle for Bikini Bottom leaderboards. NG+, you start the game with cruise boosting. Any percent, the classic you guys are watching now. And 100%, beating the game, getting all the golden spatulas. 3 teams and 3 players per team will face off to see which 3 people can beat the game. Money. All 3 categories straight in a row as quickly as possible. I can hardly contain myself. I'm so nervous and excited. I'm feeling so many emotions. I almost cried while I was watching that video with you guys. I've seen it so many times. I still almost cried again. But goddamn, we're going to give them the fattest raid. We're going to give them the fattest raid right now. And I'm going to go calculate how much revenue we got so we can give the donation to the charity. And let's go enjoy this event, guys. I'm so excited. And I'm going to probably hop on the commentary at some point, though. I just got to collect myself and just relax for a little bit, but I'll try to be on at some point. All right, guys, take care. I love you all, and I cannot fucking wait to play this remake. Peace.